Welcome to Expert Table Talks, a series of the European Blind Union, brought to you by the EBU Braille Working Group.
Hello everyone, my name is Oleg Shevkun and I'm one of the hosts of this wonderful table talk organized by the Braille Working Group of the European Blind Union. And we'll talk about that group and the webinars that will be taking place in the next months. So once again, welcome everybody to the second in our series of webinars on using our Braille displays. In this series of 4 webinars, we're going through the 4 C's of using our Braille displays with various devices. The first C is connecting, and that's what we looked at in January. And we talked about how to connect our Braille displays to our phones, computers, and we dived into things like what hid Braille is and why you need it or why you may not care. Today we'll be talking about consuming information on your Braille display. That's how do I read what shows up on my Braille display? And what if what I see is not the same as what I would expect to see? Like, for example, I'm trying to read English, but my Braille display is showing German contracted Braille. Or I get a music file and they say it's a BRF file, and I open it and it's complete gibberish. And that kind of stuff we'll be looking in today. And how to read faster with our Braille displays. In March, we'll be getting together and we'll be talking about controlling our device from the Braille display. The Braille display is a full terminal and you can control any device from the Braille display. And you can actually even adjust how that's done. So that's the theme for March. And in April, we'll be talking about creating content with Braille display. Probably we're not going to write Moby Dick or War and Peace with a Braille display, and that's okay because these have already been written. But many things could be created and created fast. And that's exactly the subject for April. Now, the way we're doing it today, we have 3 parts to this table talk. There'll be 3 groups of presenters, and each group will have about 25 minutes. There will be a presentation, and there will be then the time to ask questions or exchange ideas, or to add some things that we may have missed. And then at the end, there'll be like 10 minutes for the final Q&A at the end of this webinar. So, and the 3 parts for today of consuming information on the Braille display are: part 1, what I see on the display, like the characters I see. Part 2 is the controls I see, and is it possible to avoid wasting so much space on my Braille display? And number 3 is just reading techniques. How do you become a proficient Braille display reader? So these are the things we're looking at today. And for number 1, I'd like to present a very good friend and a gentleman I really like and enjoy spending time with and sharing professional experience. Rainer Delgado of the BSV here in Germany. Rainer, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hello, Rainer.
The honor's too big. What you're saying about me.
Well, you are the host of the Low Vision Song Festival, right?
International Low Vision Song Contest.
Yes,
we did
that's
it 3
right.
times every 2 years so far.
So there should be some music playing welcoming the host of the Low Vision Song Contest. I'm sorry we didn't prepare the music.
Yeah, we are talking now about different topics concerning how do you make the text that you want to read readable on your Braille display. And we have only some details, and then maybe we will have some questions, and not only me or other experts here to answer, but maybe even some of the participants who could say something to it. And we have first one detail we would like to talk about. You have this Braille displays with an own storage, which you can use as standalone device, for example, to take notes or to use a calendar or whatever. And first of all, also to read books And we have one expert here, also from Germany, Ute Lutzenberger. She told me once that she converts ebooks in a way that it's very convenient to read them after on the Braille display. And we would like to start with this, that she tells us how this works, because to me it seems very nice to have any book that you can download in your library or wherever, and then convert it in a way that you really read it very convenient. And I experienced this in the last months, being used to reading books on paper and then starting to read a whole book on Braille display, and I found it much more convenient and faster, because I have 40 cells in a line and not only, let's say, 28 or whatever. And and for this process, which Ute uses to convert a book, would be a great help for me also. And let's start with this. Ute, tell us how you do it.
Yeah, hello everybody again. I'm Ute from Germany, and I'm reading many books with a Braille display. As Rainer said, it's very convenient for me. I can read fast enough to read texts out to other people, and that's very convenient if you have small children, and if you are on the go, you have your whole bookshelf with you, and that's why I thought I would do more on this and stop reading books on paper. Even if I go to school and read out to people, I take my Braille display, 20 or 40 cell, I don't know what I have at hand, and read text. So I thought I need a way to convert ebooks to Braille, to always be able to read these books, because some Braille displays have the capability to read EPUB standard, but not all, and you always have books where it doesn't work and so on, and therefore I thought just convert it before and have it ready when you would like to read it, because Braille is a standard almost every Braille display can deal with. Some don't have the correct German standard character set, but you can always rename it to text to get around this. So I'm talking today about ebooks without DRM, because DRM is another field, and maybe we should discuss this separately. The books I read can mostly be just read or converted with Calibre software. And of course, to use the Calibre converter, you have to install it. And I don't convert to text, but I convert to docs to keep some formatting information, such as headings or paragraphs, which is later interpreted by my grade 2 program I use for German. And the conversion process is automated. I can say later on how you can find the description about how to install this automated thing. And you just download your EPUB file, copy it to the appropriate folder, and then you go to the context menu of the EPUB file. And I put the shortcut to convert the file in my send to folder to always have it ready at this, with a send to item. So you open the context menu, go up to the show more options item. I don't know if it's called this way in the English Windows, because with Windows 11 send to is in there and not on top in the context menu. So with Windows 10 you can just find send to in the context menu, and with Windows 11 you have to go to the show more options item first, and then you have your send to, and in send to I've got a shortcut. For me it's called epub 2.x, and you simply have to open this, and the conversion process is just done automatically. And the result is that your Word document is just located in the same directory as your EPUB file. So to be sure, you just have to open the newly converted Word document to be sure that you can read every character, because sometimes some characters are in a different character set and you have to simply replace them in Word. Afterwards, I use my grade 2 Braille program, which is RTFC in Germany, and there's a Word plugin to do the job for me. And my standard profile is a profile with more characters per line, no page numbers and such things, so that I can read things more easily with a Braille display. Yeah, the RTFC link is also in the document I named, where I describe on how to automate the Braille the EPUB to docx and then to Braille conversion process. And in Living Braille, the document is called Reading eBooks in EPUB format with a Braille display. And there you can find how to automate this thing.
Yeah, that's it, Ute?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you have any question? I didn't want to be too technical, you know.
Yeah. I just want to repeat the explanation in detail is on Living Braille, so livingbraille.eu. And in the moment, it's in the latest posts section, the first article that you can find there, this reading ebooks in EPUB format. And there you get in detail, step by step, what you have to do. And it's, as Ute explained, you copy the ebook in this folder, in this directory, which you prepared before. And then you start this command line file, and everything happens automatically. And you have then your Word document, and to prepare this then in a format for your Braille display, you have to use a Braille converter. And in Germany, we use this RTFC, which makes also English and French Braille, and also English and French contracted Braille.
Italian also, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's contracted Braille in Italian. But yeah, so
some Italian Braille is created in the new version, I think.
But the software itself is in German, so you have to know German to use it. But of course, to convert then this Word document, you can also use other Braille converters like Duxbury or whatever you use normally.
A Braille display that does the conversion itself, and you don't have to bother about this, and have put your Word document into your Braille display, or save the file as text in Word and put this into your Braille display. Well, that really depends on what you have and what you need.
Yeah, for example, my Braille display uses mainly RTF files. Can you convert instead of to Word also in RTF?
I suppose you can also convert to RTF, or you can even use your Word and save as RTF. But
yeah, of course, this you could do also. Or then save in TXT if you prefer.
Yeah, but then you have to use a different converter in Calibra, and you have to edit the CMD file that we use to convert the EPUB to docx now.
So if someone is skilled in this, how to to create other formats, you can comment this article on Living Braille and say, I have I use a similar technique to convert to other formats, and you can then explain it also. And I think one of the things that can happen to you is that you create a file, you copy it on your Braille display, and then you cannot read it because the signs are different from what you expect. I experienced this when I downloaded BRL files from the Braille library in Marburg in Germany, and copied them to my Braille display. And I could not read everything well. And then I had to experience that I have to save them in TXT format. And when I save this TXT format, I have to care that you also use the right code if you use a notepad and you save a file, there's only the option to save in TXT, but then you can also select the code that you want to have. And so the traditional code is ANSI or ASCII, but you have many other codes, like, for example, UTF-8, and then you have to test what code you need to use that your Braille display displays the characters in this way. You can read them in your language.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for Ute, if I may.
Yes,
Aina?
of course.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So my first question is, a EPUB file will have a structure. So like there will be a book with 10 chapters, or like 20 chapters. Each chapter may have some subheadings and so on. So with advanced Braille displays, like something like a Braille Emotion, today you would be able to navigate with the structure. But after we convert to Braille, that structure is lost. So after you've converted a large book, how do you move, for example, by chapter? Do you have to search, like use your Braille note taker function to simply search for the word chapter or whatever it may be? Or have you figured out some way to keep some of the structure?
Searching is always a good idea. Finding is even better.
Thank you.
In most cases, or with most displays, with my profile of RTFC, it works to go by paragraph to find other chapters, but that always depends on the book. So paragraph navigation is important, as well as finding, of course.
Yeah, but this RTFC software, this German Braille converter, there you can also convert, for example, into HTML or XML, and then you keep these things like headings and even links and so on. And if you have a Braille display which can read this, then you can use this functions also.
Yeah, but that always depends on the intelligence of your Braille display then.
Yeah, exactly. I had a mobile device, this PackMate, maybe some older people remember.
Some of us remember, right?
And there you had a
We're not
browser.
older, sorry. Yeah. Come on. Right.
There you had a browser, and you could open HTML files and go to headings and whatever, like surfing on the internet. And I suppose that the new Braille displays you are mentioning can do this also, but I don't have such one. I have a Vario Ultra, and there you can open doc files, for example, and then you can also use the internal Braille constructed Braille converter of the Braille display to get it in constructed Braille. But you don't have these things like going to the next heading also. But I think the very new Braille displays are able to do this. And if you have a plain text format, it's like Ute says, going per paragraph. But you can also say I have an index, and there I see the different chapters or articles. If I have a newspaper. And then I can search for this text, for the heading of the article, and find it by that.
Yeah, I'd also like to add something about this Braille encoding stuff, that the issue that was raised where you get a file from one Braille producer and you try to open it using a Braille display or a Braille device or even a Braille table from another country, and it doesn't work. Now, for example, you get a book from Leipzig or from Marburg, and you download it, and your Braille display was purchased in the United States, and you open it, and the German Braille is incorrect. And vice versa, the other way around. Like you get a book from Bookshare, and you chose the US Braille, like BRF file, and you open it on your German display, and it's gibberish and so on. As was pointed out, this is due to like various Braille encodings. That's the way Braille is encoded in your files. And there is an online tool, and I'm going to send the link in the chat right now. Braille encoding converter. So what it is like, suppose you have a file or a whole folder full of files in a wrong Braille encoding. Yeah, such as files downloaded from Bookshare or from a German library or from somewhere else. And you'd like to convert them to another encoding. And yes, batch conversions are possible. So you go to the tool on the web, or you can actually download it and run it on your computer so that you don't have to even go on the web. And in fact, at all times, conversions are carried out on your computer. Nothing is uploaded to the web. So you get your files, you choose the encoding, and there's a good choice there. The tool was put together by a person in Russia, therefore there are some encodings only used in that country. But you have for things like BRF, for like US US Braille, and there's Eurobraille, European Braille, and there's Braille Unicode for like Unicode files. And you can convert your files from or to any of those encodings. And there's also an option to decide of what to do with .7 or 8. Do you want to keep .7 or 8? Do you want to discard .7 or 8, and so on? So you choose the source encoding, you choose the target encoding, and you convert that. The problem with that tool, and somebody's asking about this in the chat, the problem with that tool is it cannot figure out which Braille encoding that file has in the first place. So that you have to figure out manually. You need to open it, so you need some familiarity. It's not going to just magically say, oh yeah, I know this file was done in Europe or in the States or in Russia, whatever. It cannot do that. So that you have to figure out yourself. But then you set the encoding you want to convert to, and you get the files that you were looking for. So that's a quick way, especially because of the batch conversion or folder conversion. You may have 100 of those files or 200 of those files. That's okay. You can just get them into the right encoding. That's quite helpful.
Problem with this is that I saw Braille displays with standard Braille tables that are not German, where not all characters have been assigned to Braille symbols. So that makes conversion rather tricky.
What do you mean? Like there's a Braille character that's not assigned to anything?
Yeah.
Well, there's a few oddities. This is Matthew Horspool jumping in. Good evening, everyone. There's a few oddities with things like in the UK, in the UK context, the ER sign I think is one of them. So dots 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and there's a few others. I don't have a full list of them where files in North American encoding transcribed using Duxbury have slightly different characters assigned than the same files converted through LibLouis. And there is a list, there's a known list. James Bowden would tell you every character and how it all works. But yes, this is a known problem. And honestly, I'm not sure there's a completely foolproof solution to it other than to be aware of it and, try and deal with it when it comes up as best as you can.
Matthew, we need to get James in touch with the author of this tool. Maybe we can figure something out. Or at least try.
We have to be in contact with the people who are doing the localization for the Braille displays to get out of this.
And also, like when we use our displays with a Braille device, it is important to be sure that you've chosen the correct Braille table for the language. And there are ways to do it in various screen readers. So the first thing you look at when you get wrong Braille is which Braille table I'm using and whether that's compatible with what I'm actually trying to do. So using an incompatible Braille table will produce incompatible results.
But I understood that you don't have a way to find out which table this file that you have is.
No.
because this was a question in the chat also, what is, is it French? Is it Indian? Is it, I don't know what? Then you have to test and to say, convert from US English to German or to Braille, and then you test if it's readable after. And if not, you have to test something else.
But isn't it true that like French and German are using the same Braille table?
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Or Ute, do you know this?
I suppose that French and German are almost the same, but between English tables and German there are big differences.
Oh yeah.
And the thing is that when you have started to take notes with your Braille display and notice afterwards that you can't read your notes with your computer, that's really tricky.
Yeah, we had this in a conference just. The new feature on your iPhone of Braille access. There you can take notes also, and this is an American English code. So you get BRF files, and then, as Ute says, then you have problems to read your own notes.
Yeah.
In this case, if you know it, you could use this converter, and then you say, please convert it from US to European, and then you can read again.
The goal should always be that in the table that is used as standard in a Braille display, all characters should be assigned.
The solution could be for everybody to use Unicode Braille.
Yeah.
But it's like almost, okay, the universal solution, let's stop all those wars, like let's all use Unicode Braille. Maybe using Unicode Braille is easier though. I mean, with eBRL format coming into like more prominence, maybe we'll get there. But that variety of Braille codes is maddening.
There were reasons, this is Matthew Horspool again, there were technical reasons why we didn't. It wasn't just a case of the war of the dots, or should it be the war of the encodings. It wasn't quite as simple as that. The biggest issue with Unicode Braille is that because of the code page of Unicode that the Unicode Braille characters are in, files that are written in Unicode Braille tend to be a bit larger than files written in ASCII Braille, whichever version of ASCII Braille you're working with, because they're double characters rather than single characters. And this gets very technical, but that's one reason. Another reason is because of the quite low-level operating systems that some of the Braille displays are working with actually may not be able to interpret Unicode Braille characters. So that there were some technical reasons why it wasn't done. It wasn't just stubbornness. The eBraille standard does change that. I believe the eBraille standard does use Unicode Braille, so we will see how that works, now that devices are a bit more modern and can probably cope with it a bit better.
Thank you, Matthew. James raised hand, so I think, James, you can just go ahead and unmute yourself. James Bowden.
Thank you. This is James here from the UK. And I wanted to give you the symptom that you have the wrong Braille table. It's not that you can't read everything at all. You'll find that generally the letters of the basic Braille alphabet, A, B, C, D, etc., they will probably appear correctly, but any other symbols like punctuation signs or Braille contractions, they're the ones which will be affected. So there's a good clue if you've got the wrong Braille table. The letters of the alphabet will probably be right, but other Braille signs will be wrong.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you, James. And I also see the message from Vivian here about another Braille converter from Vienna. I think we need to write an article for livingbraille.eu and put all that information together about converting between various Braille encodings. So I'll try.
Yeah, I just wanted to announce the website. It's punzinfo. So punzinfo.at. And there you find this converter. And Vivian writes that you also can define your own tables, so you can change the things a bit.
People, I'm sitting here shocked. So Vivian, is that Vivian Aldridge by any chance? Because if that's true, then that's one of my teachers, because I have this book here, Kurzschrift für alle, which helped me to learn German Kurzschrift, and that was one of the authors of that. Is that the same person?
I guess he is. So
That's
Vivian, you can
amazing.
unmute yourself and
Just
say
want to
hello.
say thank you. I mean, danke, danke, so danke sehr. So that's amazing. Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
So a Russian guy is learning German contracted Braille from a British guy. This is very, very funny.
International. That's like the Braille working group of the European Blind Union, you know? I'm looking at my watch and I think we should be moving to the second part. And if there are still questions from the first part, we can take them later. So shall we go on to Matthew then and to part 2 of saving your Braille displays real estate?
All right. Well, I guess that's my cue to start. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be back with you once again. Thank you for that overview of the first part of the session. I think what I'm going to do in the second part of the session is, yes, talk about saving space on your Braille display. And I think what I'm going to do is just give you a tour of some screen readers and a quick whistle-stop kind of look at what their Braille settings look like. And as we go through the Braille settings, we'll be able to work out then what do they do and why would I want to use them, and what symptoms are these settings trying to avoid, or what symptoms are these settings trying to create in some cases. So I'll try and do this fairly quickly. It's about 5:40 here now. I'll try and get wrapped up by about 6 o'clock to make sure that the other contributors have got time. I'm actually going to start with NVDA. I wasn't going to. I was going to start with JAWS, but ran into some trouble with NVDA and it's still loaded. So we may as well start with NVDA. Why not? To get into NVDA's Braille settings, there's no actual keystroke to do this. If you go into NVDA's input gestures, you can see that there is a gesture and you can assign it a keyboard shortcut, but it doesn't have one assigned by default. So what I'm going to have to do is press NVDA key and N to go into the NVDA menu.
NVDA menu.
And hopefully you can hear that okay. I'm going to down arrow to Preferences.
Preferences submenu P.
And then press the right arrow key.
Settings ... S.
And press Enter on Settings.
NVDA settings. General. Normal.
And I'm going to press B for Braille.
Braille 3 of 19.
There we go. So the first couple of settings are going to be to do with actually choosing our Braille display in the first place, which follows on from part 1 of this series about actually connecting your Braille displays.
Braille property page. Braille display grouping. Edit read-only multi-line automatic. Change ... button Alt+H. Hid keyboard input simulation checkbox not checked Alt+H.
And what I'm going to do is, some of these are really quite technical, so what I'm going to do is just tab through these, and when I get to one that's interesting, I'm going to stop and I'm going to tell you why it's interesting.
Output table. Combo box Unified English Braille code grade 2 collapsed Alt+O.
And here we are on the first one that's kind of interesting. So this kind of harkens back to what was already being said in the first part of the session. This is not to do with Braille encoding. This is not what you would want the Braille encoder websites and things like that for. This is to do with, I have a Braille display, it's connected to my screen reader, and it's giving me Braille in grade 1. How do I change my Braille into grade 2? Or it's giving me UEB and I don't want UEB, or it's giving me English Braille and I want German Braille or French Braille coming from my screen reader. This is where you go in NVDA in order to change that setting. And in NVDA, the languages and the Braille codes and the Braille grades are all in one combo box. In other screen readers, you choose the language first and then you choose the Braille code and then you choose the grade. In NVDA, it's all just one great big combo box, and you can use the up and down arrow keys and first letter navigation to work through it.
Input table. Combo box English. U.S. 8. Computer Braille collapsed Alt+I.
I'm not going to worry about this now, but you'll need to know about this setting for the third part of this series when we talk about controlling, and the fourth part, particularly when we talk about creating content.
Braille mode. Combo box follow cursors collapsed.
This has to do with if you're reading something on your Braille display, what do you want the Braille display? So you're reading something on the Braille display and then you decide to press the arrow keys on the keyboard. What do you want the Braille display to do? Do you want the Braille display to jump straight back up to where your cursor is, or do you want the Braille display to stay where it is? And at the moment, follow cursor means it will jump straight back up to where the cursor is.
Expand to computer Braille for the word at the cursor checkbox checked Alt plus X.
And this means when the cursor is on a word, should it expand to computer Braille or grade 1 effectively?
Show cursor checkbox checked Alt plus S. Blink cursor checkbox checked. Cursor blink rate, MS, edit selected 500. Cursor shape for focus, combo box dot 7 and 8 collapsed Alt plus F.
All of those settings have to do with the cursor. To be honest, when you're reading, you'll pan away from the cursor pretty quickly. So you might want to change these, but not while you're consuming content. Those settings are probably fine as they are.
Cursor shape for review, combo box dot 8 collapsed. Show messages combo box use timeout collapsed.
This is one that you might want to change. So I'm in a Zoom meeting. I'm listening into a Zoom meeting and I want to read some notes. So I Alt-Tab to my Word document and I read my notes. And then somebody posts in the chat or somebody raises their hands. And halfway through reading the sentence that says, must remember to tell them about such and such a setting, on my Braille display it now says Oleg Shevkon raised hand or somebody raised hand. This is annoying. It's not annoying that Oleg raised his hand. I'm happy he's got a question, but it's annoying because I'm reading my document and it's got interrupted by this annoying message about somebody raising their hand. This is the combo box that you would use to change this. I'll shift tab away and tab back so you can hear it again.
Show messages combo box use timeout collapsed.
There's various things you can do here, but for consuming content, you probably want to press the up arrow key once.
Disabled.
And turn them off. Set it to disabled, and then your speech will still speak those messages out loud if you have them on, but your Braille display will not show them.
Tether Braille, combo box to focus collapsed Alt plus R. Read by paragraph checkbox checked Alt plus P.
So let's say you have a Word document, and let's say your Word document has 3 paragraphs, and each of those paragraphs has 3 lines. So there are 9 lines on your Word document in total. So you press the down arrow key. If you're at the top of the document, you would press the down arrow key 9 times to get to the bottom of the document. By default, in most screen readers, what will happen is you'll read the first line of the document, and then you'll pan along. You'll press your Braille display's key to pan to the right, and you'll pan to the right, and you'll get the second bit. And then as soon as there's a new line on the screen, you'll have to take a new line on the Braille display. So what will sometimes happen is you'll press the panning button, and you'll press the panning button maybe 2 or 3 times, and on the 3rd time that you press a panning button, you'll end up, say you're on a 40-cell Braille display, you'll end up with about 10 cells of the Braille display being used and 30 blank cells. And you'll be in the middle of a sentence. There's no full stop, there's no comma, there's no rhyme or reason as to why it's just decided to put a break in the middle of the sentence, other than the fact that print's taken a new line. And it's probably not even a proper new line. It's probably just it needed to take a new line to fit it on the screen properly or to fit it on the page properly. If you enable this read by paragraph setting, what this will do is it will stop that from happening. So when print takes a new line, the Braille display will ignore the new line and carry on and fill up the Braille display until the new line is a new paragraph, and then it will stop filling up the Braille display, and it will still take a new line. You'll still have to pan to the next line to get the start of the next paragraph, but you won't have to pan to a new line to get the start of a new line.
Paragraph start marker, combo box no paragraph start marker, default, collapsed.
You probably don't need to worry about this. I will just have a look at what they are.
Double space. Pilcrow. No paragraph start marker.
So this has to do with if NVDA is not detecting your paragraphs properly, you can change it so it does a better job of detecting your paragraphs. But most of the time you'll be fine just to leave that as it is.
Focus context presentation. Combo box fill display for context changes collapsed.
This might be one you want to look at, but it's a fairly advanced feature. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. But if you find that the Braille display isn't quite showing what you want it to show, you might want to have a quick look at this.
Show selection combo box default, enabled, collapsed Alt plus L.
So if I've got text selected, should it show on the Braille display? For consuming content, you probably don't need to worry about this because there won't be content selected. But if it gets annoying, you can turn it off.
Formatting display combo box default, Lewis, collapsed Alt plus D.
I think this has to do with if you've got bold text or italicized text on your Braille display, should those be shown on the Braille display using the appropriate Braille code signs? And so you could turn those off if you wanted to.
Speak character when routing cursor in text checkbox not checked Alt plus K. Speak when navigating by line or paragraph checkbox not checked Alt plus L. Avoid splitting words when possible checkbox checked Alt plus W.
This is called word wrap. Avoid splitting words where possible. So some people like having this on. So I'm on my Braille display. I've written a document and it says, my name is Matthew and I am doing a presentation for the European Blind Union. That's not going to fit on a 40-cell display. So the 40-cell Braille display is probably going to show my name is Matthew and I am doing, and then it probably won't show much more than that. Or doing let's say doing So we've got my name is Matthew and I'm doing on the Braille display. And there's probably enough room, I mean, I'm just guessing here, but there's probably enough room on the Braille display to include the first 3 or 4 words, 3 or 4 characters of the word presentation. Should it put PRES on the end of the line to fill up the Braille display, and then you pan forward and it says ENTATION? Or should it just say, do you know what? No, if the whole word won't fit, we'll leave those last few cells blank and we'll shift the whole word to the start of the next line. So in NVDA, it's called avoid splitting words when possible, which is quite a nice explanation for it, actually. In most other screen readers, it's called word wrap. And for longer Braille displays, I tend to find it's a good idea to have it on. For shorter Braille displays, particularly if you're using something like a Focus 14, actually, if you've only got 14 cells to play with and you've got word wrap on, you might only fit one word on the display if it's a long word. And so you might find in those instances turning it off might mean you have to press the panning button fewer times if you can cope with having partial words on your display.
Unicode normalization combo box default, disabled. Interrupt speech while scrolling combo box default, enabled. OK button.
All right. And that's your lot for NVDA. So hopefully that made some sense. I'm just going to really quickly now turn over to JAWS and show you. I'm not going to go through all of JAWS's Braille settings, you'll be pleased to know, but I'm going to show you where some of those settings are in case you're interested. So in case you're a JAWS user, we've already explained what they do now, and they'll do much the same in different screen readers. I just need to switch screen readers in order to show in a different environment. So JAWS is coming up now. JAWS is up. I'm going to do in JAWS, again, there's no easy way to get to this. So I'm going to do insert 6 to go to the settings center.
Zoom software JAWS settings center.
And Control-Shift-D to go to the default file.
JAWS settings.
Tab once to the tree view.
JAWS settings.
And press B for Braille.
Braille closed.
So let's have a look at some of the settings that we found in NVDA that we might want to also find in JAWS. We'll right arrow to open this branch.
Braille open. 1. General closed. 1 of general open. 9
right arrow on there.
2. Translation closed. Translation open. 3. Language English United Kingdom. 1 of 6.
So remember that in NVDA it was a combo box, and you could select your language and your code and your grade all in one fell swoop. In JAWS, you have to do this separately. You have to select the language first, and then you have to select the code, and then you have to select the grade. Now, this is not, well, or at least the language and then the code and grade. Now, this is not a lesson in using the JAWS Settings Center. However, I'm going to change this by pressing the space bar.
English United States for Esperanto. Estonian Estonia for Ethiopia, Farsi Iran, Filipino Philip.
Now, let's assume I want to get to Dutch. I'm going to have to press the space bar quite a long time. So I will tell you one trick about the Settings Center. If you press F6 at this point.
General. Translation language. Filipino Philippines. 47 of 116.
I now don't have to use the space bar. I now have a normal combo box, and I can now just press the letter D.
Danish Denmark. Dravidian South Dutch Belgium.
And use the down arrow key to find, in this case, Dutch Belgium.
Dutch Netherlands. 40 of 106.
Dutch Netherlands. And you might find that that's an easier way to work with this particular combo box. I'll press E to go back to English.
English United Kingdom. 41 of 100.
And I'll press F6 to get back to the tree view.
Language English United Kingdom.
The rest of these are fairly self-explanatory.
Output Unified English Braille Grade 2. Input Unified English Braille Grade 2. Show current word and computer Braille unavailable. Show font attribute marks.
This, like the NVDA setting, is to say if I've got bold or italics text or underlined text should I use the UEB or the Braille code indicators for those? You can either have that on or off. And if you don't care about it, you might want to turn it off. It'll save you a couple of cells. I quite like having it on.
Language profiles ...
I'm not going to worry about that too much now. I think I could do a whole masterclass on that particular section.
2. Braille mode structured. 2 of 9. Jet panning closed.
Panning, I'm going to have a quick look in.
Pan 3. User pan mode automatic. Pan text by paragraph.
That's the equivalent of what we were talking about, where if there's a new line in the print, should the Braille display ignore the new line unless it's a new paragraph, or should the Braille display observe the new line? So pan text by paragraph, if that was checked, the Braille display would ignore new lines unless they were the starts of paragraphs.
Auto pan mode automatic. Auto advance maximum intervals. Braille presentation and panning. Reverse panning buttons. 2. Active cursor follows Braille display. Braille cursor follows active cursor.
That's your cursor settings.
Display text in 8. Braille mode. Enable.
Now, display text in 8. Braille mode. I'm not going to dwell too much on this, except to say that if you're reading a BRF file and you have your JAWS set to computer Braille, you might want to turn that off, because a lot of BRF files have .7 in them, and turning this off would stop the .7 from showing.
Enable Braille sleep mode. Enable word wrap. Auto detect Braille display. 1. Braille marking closed. 2 of 7. Braille.
I'm not going to look in there, but that's where your selection and things like that would be.
Cursor closed. Flash messages closed.
In flash messages, I will just have a quick look at it.
2. Enable flash messages. 1 of 5. Flash message.
Again, so like I was talking about, okay, I'm in Zoom and somebody raised their hand and it's disturbed my reading. Here is where you can go to enable or disable those messages. If you turn off the enable flash messages option, you won't get all of that annoying stuff on your Braille display.
Flash message timeout 30,000 milliseconds. Enable message prefixes. Verbosity level beginner highest.
And if you want to control the flash messages on the Braille display, so you want some but not others, there is a certain amount of control that you can do with the controls in there.
1. Structured mode. Advanced closed.
I'm going to have a look at one more setting in JAWS, which we didn't see in NVDA.
2. Placement of status cells left. 1 of 3. Advanced Braille.
This has to do with the first 4 or 5 characters of your Braille display, if you're using JAWS, will have some funny symbols in them, which can be useful if you know what they mean, but a lot of people don't know what they mean. And if you're reading Braille, you probably don't particularly care about them either. They come into their own when we're talking about creating content, or I do some quite clever things with them, having the control type in them and things like that. So I do quite like the status cells, but from a reading point of view, particularly on a small display, you can turn these off. And if I press the space bar,
right, 2 of 3, none, 3 of 3,
to set that to none, the whole of the Braille display will now be set aside for your content, and you won't have those funny symbols at the start or end of the Braille display, which you might be accustomed to seeing if you haven't gone in and changed that setting. The last thing I'll do really quickly is I'm not going to go through them in any great detail, but I do just want to show where they are. If you go in on an iPhone, if you go into Settings, Accessibility, VoiceOver, and then from VoiceOver Settings, if you swipe right from VoiceOver Settings,
voice tab, double learn voice speak adjust speech Braille mantis,
and double tap,
match input and output tables.
There are various settings in here that are very similar to what we've already been talking about in JAWS and NVDA. There's a couple I do just want to point out, and then I'll open it up for other people.
Input and output, Braille screen input, Braille tables, Braille access, item overview, automatic translation, status cells, button, 2 of 11.
So there's your options for status cells.
Equations use Nemeth code, show on screen keyboard, turn pages when panning, switch button, on.
And that's the one that I really wanted to draw your attention to. The rest of them, having listened to the 2 previous demonstrations, you should be able to figure out, I think. But turn pages when panning is really useful. Let's say you're reading a Kindle book or something like that, and you get to the end of a page. What should your Braille display do? Should your Braille display sort of freeze up or try and pan into the bottom of the screen to try and get access to the other controls? Or should your Braille display just turn to the next page? And the turn pages when panning option allows the screen reader to turn pages when you get to the bottom, so that your Braille display, in theory anyway, stays reading the book and doesn't stray out into the boundary of the application. So I've just about managed to do it. It's not quite 6 o'clock yet. It's nearly 6 o'clock, and I am conscious that we need to move on to the next section. But I'm happy to hear any thoughts from the panel or take any immediate questions, and then Oleg, I'll leave it up to you from there.
So, any questions for Matthew? Would you please raise your hands if you've got any? And Reiner's iPhone raised hands. I'm finding out that iPhones have hands. So, Reiner, go ahead then.
I find it very interesting, Matthew, what you explain. And I have one addition to JAWS. I find it very nice to switch between contracted and computer Braille. And in JAWS, you can have a shortcut for it. And I could shortly explain how it works. You have to go to the JAWS menu, and then you go, I don't know how it's called in English, because my JAWS is in German. In German, it's Hilfsprogramme. Maybe someone knows this, how it's called. So this
keyboard manager?
Yeah, you have to get to the keyboard manager, but it's a sub-menu of this,
utilities.
It's explore utilities.
Okay. Utilities. And then you go to the keyboard manager, and then you can go with the key B or BR to everything concerning Braille, and then you have this Braille Grade 2 translation, and there then you can set a shortcut. And for my Braille display, it was set already, but you can also have for your standard computer keyboard, you can make a shortcut for it. And I have a shortcut for switching from contracted to uncontracted Braille. And then you have another option to get the whole line in Braille or to get the current word in computer Braille. And that's also sometimes helpful to be able to switch it just with one key. Yeah, I recommend to do this. For example, if you just want to read something, you can use this contracted Braille, and then if you want to edit text, like writing an email, it may be better to have computer Braille because it's then easier to click on single letters and so on, and then you can switch to computer Braille again. And in NVDA, I didn't find this. And Matthew, maybe you know if it's possible or if it's not possible to make a shortcut for this in NVDA.
Well, I'm more of a JAWS expert than an NVDA expert, so I don't know of a shortcut to do it. There might be one. I'll go and have a look and see if I can find one. It might be another case of in input gestures, there are some gestures that have been... So input gestures is NVDA's equivalent of the keyboard manager, essentially. And there are some that are there but have not been assigned. So this may be one of them. I'll have a quick poke around. But no, I'm not aware of it. Having said that, NVDA's Braille settings I find are a little bit easier to work with than JAWS's Braille settings. So although it's not quite as convenient as one keystroke, going into NVDA's Braille settings and changing it is perhaps less arduous than going into JAWS setting center and changing it.
We've got a good... Well, first I'll have some hands from Panayotis, for example. So I'm going to ask Panayotis to unmute. But before that, there's a question in the chat from Sievlad, and he asks about reading BRF files on your computer. And can you read BRF files on your computer? If so, what Braille table should be used? I could start answering this, but we have plenty of experts on the panel. So you get a BRF file, or at least it says it's BRF. What do you do with this on your computer to read it?
So if I'm reading a BRF file, my BRF files tend to be in North American encoding because that's what we use in the UK. That goes back to the previous part of the discussion. If I'm reading it, I tend to open a BRF file in Notepad and then change my Braille code to US Computer Braille 6 dot. And then that allows me to read most BRF files pretty well. In JAWS, I do that in the Notepad configuration file, not in the default one. So as soon as I go into Notepad, it drops into Computer Braille. As soon as I come out of Notepad, it reverts to Grade 2 UEB. in NVDA, you can create configuration profiles. So you could make a configuration profile for Notepad and then set that profile to change your Braille code, so you could achieve the same ends in both screen readers. On the iPhone, I'm not really sure how you'd do it, to be honest, but on the iPhone now, I would have thought that you could just do it in Braille Access, which we haven't covered, but that would probably be an easier way to do it than messing about with Braille tables.
My problem with BRF files is exactly what you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that, okay, you get it, but the format, the BRF extension doesn't tell you which Braille table is going to be used. And there's nothing in that file to tell you that. So it's a guessing game based on where you got it, what originated that, or which library got it from. And like with the first, the fun begins when somebody sends you a file and says, hey, can you have this in Boston Braille? And we were having this issue here in Germany when helping Ukrainian refugees. Somebody sends me a file and says, oh, we need that brailled. And this is just a simple BRF or a BRL. But we're brailing it and it comes out wrong. Can we figure out why? And here the hunting begins. You really hunt for the correct encoding. I wish there was an easier way to do it.
I think you just need to know a specialist who knows his Braille encodings well enough. I mean, if you gave me a BRF file, I could probably work it out just by having a quick read of it. But yeah, it takes some knowledge of encoding to be able to do that, I think.
Yeah. German, that's probably for Uta and Heiner. For uncontracted Braille tables in German, that would be Vollschrift. Is there a difference between using RTFC and LibLouis? So can you actually use LibLouis to prepare text in German Vollschrift? I think the answer is yes. So LibLouis should do that. Kurzschrift, no, but
Vollschrift, so this
Vollschrift.
uncontracted Braille, which has 8 contractions. I think I don't know LibLouis so well, but it's very easy, so it must be the same. And in contracted Braille, there might be differences because, of course, software makes always some faults, and the faults of LibLouis can be different than those of RTFC.
I'm actually amazed how RTFC does it. I think they've got a dictionary built in, and a pretty large dictionary, because otherwise, I mean, you have to go by meaning of the word to translate it, or actually to back translate it.
Yeah, it's a kind of everything, I guess. It's a very well programmed, and it has, of course, also a dictionary. I think that, or I've heard that LibLouis is an uncontracted and in contracted German Braille also quite good. So if you are not very vicious in having really no fault at all or mistake at all, then LibLouis is also nice.
We have a question from Panayotis in Greece.
Yes, indeed. Nice to meet you all. Good evening. Oleg, it's the second time you're getting with me. You might remember my comments on Bookshare when you had
on
this
FSCast.
region survey.
Right, we met on FSCast.
Well, I am a JAWS user. Much of what Matthew has said, I'm doing through the preferences in the settings table. I find it more preferable. But one thing and I've got 6 languages stored in my computer. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is, how do you feel about this checkbox in JAWS, which says link Braille to the keyboard? I find that useful because I often change to typing in French and German, but I'm also a bit errant, and I must admit, because we've got some Hungarian, never managed to do proper Braille in Hungarian, never, with linking. So I wanted the opinion of yours, especially you, Matthew, about how useful have you found this particular checkbox of linking the keyboard to the Braille table. Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to hear from you. I must admit, I'm not terribly multilingual. So, and I don't tend to write on my Braille display's keyboard. I tend to use QWERTY input. So I don't use that checkbox at all. But I'm happy to hear from other people on the panel who might use that checkbox more than I do.
We are running out of time, so we will defer this until the final or closing discussion, if that's okay. If it's not okay, we don't have a choice right now, because we also have next section. We have two presenters, Michal from Slovakia and joined by Dave from the United Kingdom. So, gents, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity. This is Dave Williams from the UK. I chair the Brailleist Foundation, a community of people passionate about spreading Braille and tactile literacy. And in this section, Michal will speak about the ergonomics of using a Braille display and what you might want to consider in terms of buttons. And when you are choosing a Braille display, that will, of course, inform your purchasing decision. I am going to speak a little bit about reading fluency. And you've heard throughout the session a lot about livingbraille.eu, and if you haven't been there already, then I strongly suggest that you do so, because it's a fabulous resource. It's kind of like a Braille wiki, where not only can you access a wide range of resources and materials and interesting articles about all things relating to Braille, but you can also sign up and become a member, and it's completely free, and you can contribute content. So if you have an area of expertise or something that you would like to share with the community, you can do that over at livingbraille.eu. Now, somebody who did that is my good friend from Germany, Sonja Schmidt, who last year compiled a paper called Braille Fluency in Individuals with Vision Impairments, and you can find this over on the livingbraille.eu website. But as we were talking about consuming content, we felt it would be useful to share some of the findings in that paper that was presented at the Tactile Reading Conference in Amsterdam last summer. And the conclusion, the sort of the short version, is that Braille fluency is less about reading speed. You may want to improve your reading speed, and there are ways to measure that. And Rainer wrote an interesting piece actually on Living Braille about recording your reading speed. But actually, fluency is about more than speed. It's about rhythm. It's about finding confidence and being able to read with greater independence. And really, this comes from the findings of the paper that really shares quite a few tips that have been derived from various sources. Lots of people around the world who are researching the subject of Braille reading fluency. Dr. Nathalie Martiniello from Canada is definitely worth your time and attention if this is a subject that interests you. And we all know that obviously reading often, short daily sessions, they can help build real progress. So keep your Braille display nearby, keep it with you, keep it at your bedside, just to remove those barriers to short daily reading sessions. We also know from hard copy Braille, and it's also true with electronic Braille, that a lightness of touch is preferred by the most fluent Braille readers. So protect your sensitivity and move your fingers smoothly across the display. Often having warm hands can promote greater tactile sensitivity. Also, think about your posture. Where is your Braille display? We know that some Braille displays that have QWERTY keyboards mean that the Braille display, if it's on your lap, can actually push the Braille cells up into towards your torso, which can lead to quite an uncomfortable reading position. So when thinking about good reading posture, you might want to use a tray or a table in front of you to support the weight of your Braille display, so you're not thinking about the device moving about or slipping away from you, or even worse, dropping on the floor. Don't drop your Braille display on the floor. It's never a good idea. And so do think about that, how you're going to remain relaxed. Make sure that your wrists are relaxed and your shoulders are relaxed. Also, train your tactile skills beyond just reading Braille text. There are lots of exercises that you can do, playing tactile games, doing crafts, playing a musical instrument, cooking, and all sorts of activities that engage your tactile senses are very worthwhile. And if you are able, consider using both hands and multiple fingers to help with flow. Again, this is a characteristic of faster Braille readers, tend to adopt a kind of a scissor-like reading technique where the first half of the line may be read with the left hand and the second half of the line with the right. Now, these are just general, principles. There's no hard and fast here. These are tips, things that you can try. And also try and read across different types of material and devices. That'll help to build your resilience. So just because this is about Braille displays and we're talking about consuming content from a Braille display, that's not to say that you shouldn't use hard copy as well, because that can certainly help promote fluency. And then Dr. Engelbrechtson in the United States, he studied a process called chunking, sort of thinking ahead and grouping words into larger chunks that have multiple signs. So getting used to those chunks and recognizing those chunks and anticipating what comes next can also help with reading fluency. Reading with others, of course, is also a great way. If you have a group near you, then reading in a safe place with friends who are also reading, maybe taking it in turns, that can also help to promote regularity and confidence. And certainly at the Brailleist Foundation, that's something that we very much practice. We have reading groups. We call it book club, but really it's a reading group on a Thursday evening where beginner Braille readers, let's say, come together to read in a group setting. And occasionally some of those readers will just try and stretch themselves by pushing their speed a little bit, and while it's great to try and read something different and something less familiar on a regular basis, often motivation is driven, mastery is driven by reading what you love. And so if there's something that you're passionate about, you're obviously much more likely to read it than all the terrible things that are in the news. So fluency grows like fitness. Steady practice beats force every time. So I hope there's been something here from the content that Sonia brilliantly compiled, and that you will go and check out the full paper over on livingbraille.eu, where there are lots of other fabulous resources as well.
We have some questions there, Dave. Will you take them?
Yeah, sure.
Scott Edwards got his hand raised. Scott,
yes.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. One thing I've found useful when it comes to just reading, more extensive reading of a book or a lengthy document, is to push. I'm a Mantis user, and I find it, since I'm not making extensive use of the QWERTY keyboard at that, when I'm just reading, I'll find it more ergonomical to push the device slightly back away from me, because I just extend my arms a little bit to read more comfortably that way. That's something that some people may find useful, is that you might just pay attention to about how close you are to your device, or how close it is to you, to your chest, to your stomach level, or whatever, and maybe if you're finding it uncomfortable, maybe push it back a ways to read more comfortably.
No, it's a great tip, Scott. You're absolutely right. And think about your hand position, because in order to maximize contact with your Braille, really what we're sort of looking for is a kind of a flatter hand position. Sometimes people talk about reading with your fingertips, and that sort of almost suggests like you're you're kind of pressing down, and actually, really, you want your hand to be flat as much as possible. So making sure that your back is well supported, maybe even support for your forearms, and getting a kind of a flat hand position. And as you say, having your Braille display maybe slightly further away from you, with your elbow at a kind of a right angle, that can help to promote a more natural.
Reminds me of the old school days where in typing class, typing teacher, get those wrists up. That was in typing, but when Braille reading, you bring them down a bit.
Right. And I know we have Chantal on the call, who is a practitioner in this area, and often talks about hand scanning when you're starting to develop your tactile skills in hard copy Braille, that actually using the whole of your hand to feel the surface. And you might do this a little bit actually on a multi-line Braille display. But for most
or
people,
if I'm scanning down a page and looking for a particular where one article in a magazine starts and another one begins, oftentimes you'll see a little line showing where another article might begin. So pretty much all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Good evening, everybody. Michal speaking. Thank you, Dave, to walk us through all the methods we collected. It's very nice article. I really encourage everybody to check it out. Maybe we can touch on specifics of reading on a Braille display, because mostly in languages where you don't have a contracted Braille, as Slovak languages and many others as well, it's maybe quite important to think about or train your speed when you are reading on a Braille display, where you can't use a scissor method to read, which Dave was explaining. So when I was thinking about this, at least two possibilities came to my mind. First is the position of penning keys or thumb keys or whatever we call them. And this is actually very depending on the device you are using, but it's very useful to have really motor memory, or how to call it, like a skill to thumb the correct button whenever you come to the end of the line with the right hand. And then the second option, which comes maybe handy, maybe not, it depends maybe on a reader, but it's automatic scrolling, either with the correct setting of automatic scrolling by time. You can set your Braille display to some specific seconds when it changes and pans forward. Or, as we were discussing before this panel, there are Braille displays with touch sensors where they just pan when you reach the sensor. If these automatic things are helpful or not, it's very difficult. It's just that people have to try and find out. When I was discussing this with my wife, she's very fast Braille reader, and she told me that it's not helpful for her, but it depends really on each Braille user, and maybe if you are using contracted or not contracted Braille. So at least these are things to consider when you are consuming content or when you are just reading with the Braille display. So any ideas about this or questions about this or whatever?
Plenty of questions here, gentlemen. Dr. Antonopoulos, I'm going to ask you to wait because you've spoken today, and there are people who've never spoken in this session. So let's go through those hands first. Mustafa, would you please unmute yourself and ask a question or give your comment? Hello, Mustafa.
Hello. Thank you for all the information. Really useful. I'm Mustafa. I live in Spain. I'd like to make a comment. Maybe also it could be useful for reading more comfortably with the Braille display. I know that some brands of Braille displays, maybe note takers, already have an option to adjust automatically. If imagine, for example, if we have a BRF or here in Spain, we use a format called it's BRA. That is formatted with 42 or 40 something characters per line, but I have a 40-cell Braille display, so I sometimes have to pan horizontal, not only moving by line, but also panning. And sometimes it's like a bit uncomfortable. So I know some brands already have the option to auto adjust on the fly, like to convert in real time 42 BRF 42 character per line BRF to 40. So I'd like to mention it. Maybe that could be useful for. I personally I don't have that. I think it's of humanware, but I think it's a really interesting option. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on that?
This is Matthew Horspool here. I'm aware that some displays can do this. I believe the Orbit range of displays can do this. I forget exactly what the option is called, but there definitely is an option in the menu somewhere for them to do it. Rather frustratingly, the Humanware displays can't do it, but the Humanware NLS e-reader can do it. I don't know if any of the other displays can do it. I don't know if HIMS or anyone can do it. And I think probably it's a bit of a stretch if you're using a screen reader to read a BRF file on a computer. It's probably a bit of a stretch to make it do that. You probably just have to suffer in silence if you're doing that.
So from Mustafa in Spain, I think we are going to hear from Debbie Gillespie. Debbie, if you would unmute yourself by pressing Alt-A and ask a question or make a comment.
I'm interested in two things. First, I'll do the last one first. I'm wondering, that's interesting. I've never heard of the 42 to 40 on the fly either. But I'm wondering, for example, if you take a BRF, like you're able at the Humanware line of products in general, whether you're doing the Victor Stream or a Braille display or whatever, that you are able to take a BRF file and have it converted to audio. So I'm assuming that it wouldn't work there either, and it wouldn't just automatically make the word. But it'd be interesting to note that. So if they were to allow this, would they export the whole thing to the whole line? And I don't know. I think it's opening a can of worms if they start. But I'd be interested in the US if you take that BRF file and you have an NLS reader that reads it in speech like Humanware's brilliance, like the e-reader. I don't know if it has a speech, but anyway, it'd be interesting to see if that worked as well in converting it and reading it in audio. My main question, though, is about auto scrolling. I don't know anybody who uses it. And when I first saw it many years ago, I thought I would really like it. But I don't. I mean, I don't hate it or anything. It's just that I think I'd rather control my own hand speed rather than have the display do it. Does anybody use auto scroll for reading? It saves moving across the lines, especially if you have a bigger display, like an 80 cell. But I'm curious to know, and I love the international perspective of this group, but I'm curious to know if anybody uses auto scroll.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm going to forward this question to our panelists, but also if you're in the conference and if you're using the auto scroll on your Braille display, just say yes in chat. All I'm asking to do. So Alt-H on your computer to open the chat and just write yes. So comments, please. And if you'd like to comment on the question and you raised hand for that, just go ahead and unmute and make a comment.
Maybe I can say something to this auto scroll, but I don't use it so far. In Germany, we have this help tech Braille displays, which really switch automatically scanning your finger movements. But I didn't experience it. And I used in my JAWS training last week. I experienced you can switch to auto scroll and then your Braille display switches from time to time, let's say every 5 seconds. Of course, you can control the speed. And the problem, of course, is what is if you have difficult words to read, long words or things that you don't know before, and so your speed gets slower. But your reading speed gets slower, but your Braille display speed remains. And then you have quickly to switch the speed a bit lower to be able to read everything still. And I think if you train this a lot and if you're very skilled, it might be a very nice thing. But maybe someone could say something about this matter, how it works, and if it really is worth to practice it. Svetlana is writing she does also use it. Maybe someone of these people who use it really in practice can say some words.
This is James Bowden. So I do use auto scroll, but only on the Orbit Reader 20 display, reading native. So I do not use auto scroll on, for example, the Humanware Brailliant 40. And there are two reasons for that. First of all, a shorter reading line means you get a really regular pattern of hand movements, more so than on a 40 cell Braille line. But also the Orbit reader, if you miss a bit, and as you were just saying there, if you don't read the full line before it moves further on, you just press the button to go back and it will keep in auto scroll, reset the timer, and you can just read the bit you missed and then it'll carry on, no problem. Now, because it's only a 20 cell Braille display, you set the timer, well, I set the timer reasonably quickly, which means even if you have to go back, it's only a couple of seconds before you go back to where you were previously to resume reading onwards. For the longer Braille display, your hand has to travel a much further distance along the line before you want to refresh to the next line. That means you have to slow the timer down. That means if you make a mistake and need to go back, it's a much longer journey before you can go forward again. And also, I've discovered, certainly on the version of the Humanware display I've got here, the timer is not properly reset when you go backwards. So if you miss a bit and then you go back, the timer's still ticking, and halfway through reading it, it goes forwards again, and you can get into a bit of a mess very quickly. So on the short display, Orbit Reader, yes, auto scroll. On the longer Braille display, Humanware Brailliant, no. That's me.
Thank you, James. We are going to move through the people with raised hands, and on we go to Vsevolod in Russia. So, Vsevolod, would you please unmute yourself?
Hello, everybody.
What's your question, comment?
Hello, everybody. This is Vsevolod from Russia, and I have got a quick question. I already asked it in the chat, but I think it wasn't really understood. I started recently revising my German, and I noticed, and I knew that there are several Braille tables in iOS, including RTFC. So my question is, do I understand correctly that basically there is no difference in case of using uncontracted Braille? So if I use Duxbury, Braille tables, LibLewis, or RTFC, it will be all the same and no difference for me in reading German, and that RTFC is only about the contraction differences. Thank you.
Thank you,
And maybe I can say something to it. Yes, I think it is so. So RTFC is a software, as we mentioned before, but converting technique of RTFC is also included as Braille table in iOS. And it really makes sense to use this if you use contracted Braille. Then you can read a very, very good contracted Braille, and you can write it with your Braille display or with this screen Braille keyboard. And you write contracted Braille, and it comes out normal letters, readable for sighted people. But for uncontracted Braille, it does not make a difference to use RTFC or the standard Braille table.
Now, this is strange. So I'm here in Germany talking to a German person, and I'm about to disagree with something that you said.
Please do.
Here's why. I would still insist on people, if at all possible, even with iOS, I would still insist on using RTFC. And the reason, it's not about the letters. It's from my personal experience. Maybe that changed. That's changed. I tried this like a year ago, and I switched to RTFC, and I'm there just at all times. The reason is special characters like quotes, asterisks, the various kinds of brackets, and so on. In my experience, at least, I may be wrong, okay? But in my experience, at least, RTFC, even on iOS, is doing a better job presenting those characters correctly and doing the formatting right. So even with uncontracted Braille, but it's a personal opinion.
Yeah, maybe you are right. So I don't care so much about this very, very special rules, how to write brackets and other special signs. And I assume that RTFC is better, but because the programmer of RTFC is very ambitious in making everything fulfilling the rules of German Braille, contracted Braille and uncontracted Braille, and maybe there might be some details where it's more accurate than the standard iOS German Braille table.
Yeah, we have Dr. Antonopoulos, and he just sent a message, but it's better to ask you to say this out loud. I mean, you've been holding your hand raised. I understand it's not much effort in Zoom, but still, Dr. Antonopoulos, what would you like to say?
Well, the message was that Ryan and James almost raised what I meant to tell you in my suggestion. I'm using the help check ATC, or that is the automatic panning. I tried, and I would always say that it's a very different thing reading Braille for yourself and reading Braille aloud, such as I have to do in conferences and so on sometimes. I toyed with the idea of using automatic scrolling while reading aloud, and it was an absolute failure. I would strongly suggest, and I wonder if colleagues here agree or disagree with me, but never advise people to use ATC if they have to make a presentation. When you're doing it for yourself, it's lovely, but not for reading aloud. This is all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Dr. Antonopoulos. And now we move to Timur. Timur, would you please unmute yourself? And what's your question or comment?
Yeah, good evening for everyone.
Alexandru after that. Yeah, Timur, please.
Good evening for everyone. I'm Timur from Italy. I'd like to ask that earlier Dave talked about Braille speech improvements, and he said something about that are existing a group of people which sometimes in a week are trying to read something together and improve their speed with the Braille. Excuse me, if it can be a little bit strange like a phrase, but I hope that you got it. And my general question is, the practice of it is in England only, or in the United States, or it can be also, I can see it also in the Europe, because now I'm in Italy and I like to try to enter to some of these groups to improve my Braille speed, obviously.
So like a Braille reading circle, is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you, Timur. That's a bit of off topic for today, but like in the latest issue of Vollzeichen magazine, I was reading about a Braille reading circle in Berlin. So I think there must be some of them here in Europe. Rainer and others, do you know anything about that?
Yes, in Berlin there is one, as I have heard. There was a Braille course in the local association of the blind of Berlin, and some of the participants, after learning Braille, they decided to meet, I don't know, every month, I guess, to read together. And that's very, very nice, I think. And there's another thing, another association in Germany, the name is a bit difficult, DVBS. They have a group on reading Braille, and they meet online and talk about books and reading and so on. I think that Ute has taken part there. Maybe she can say something more about it. And I think that in UK there are also such kinds of online meetings for Braille readers, just to talk about literature and reading Braille.
Braillists have a reading club. They meet on Zoom, writes Svetlana. So Matthew, why didn't you tell us about this?
Well, Dave did, and I was staying quiet in case Dave wanted to unmute. Dave did mention it, and I think this is why the question came up, is because Dave did mention it at the end of his presentation.
So that's on Zoom.
So
that's
on Zoom.
Okay.
It's on Zoom. We have something of a UK focus because obviously we're based in the UK, and the UK is where we get our books from and things like that. We have a few members from outside the UK, including a couple of members from Europe. We have at least one German speaker who comes to the Braillist Book Club very regularly. So certainly we'd be up for talking to you about it. Obviously, it's in the UK. It's at a UK time. English is the common language. But yes, by all means, write to help@braillists.org, and we can certainly have a conversation about whether you might fit into that group. And we'd certainly be happy to do that. You know, we've done it for people in the past, and we're happy to do it again.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but we have hands, and there are some people who I think wanted to say something and to contribute. Alexandro has been holding hand for quite a while. Alexandro, would you please unmute yourself by pressing Alt-A or whatever is appropriate in your case? And hello, what's your question or comment?
Hey everybody, this is Alex from Romania. I have a little question on encoding, if I may. Is it okay to consider this encoding like the computer language, if you will? So, for example, if we take a symbol like, I don't know, question mark in English, if I'm not mistaken, it's dots 2, 3, 6. Here in Romanian, for example, it's dots 2, 6. But in computer Braille, like North American, it's 1, 4, 5, 6, and probably in other encodings it will be a different sign. Is it okay to consider like this encoding thingy like a computer language?
Yes, I think that's probably fair enough. When we talk about the encoding of a BRF file, we're specifically talking about which computer Braille table is being used to define the symbols. So if you have a BRF file that's been created in an English-speaking country, it's probably using North American encoding. So you're right, a question mark means dots 1, 4, 5, 6. So if I was writing a C crotchet, I would write a question mark. If I was writing the TH sign, I would write a question mark. If I was, and so on, because a question mark just means dots 1, 4, 5, 6. If you have a BRF file that's created in Europe, it's probably using Euro-Braille, so the European computer code, where the question mark means a different combination of dots. And that's what we mean by encoding. I'm not sure how well... It's a fairly technical subject. I'm not sure how well I've explained that, but hope it made some sort of sense.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. It definitely did. Thank you so much.
And I'm not sure if we're going to hear from this person, but Adele was sending several messages, and I've just asked Adele to unmute.
I'm Adele. I'm Canadian of Algerian origin. So my main question is about the code. So you're in a few words, you're analyzing how, as you did it, the Braille encoding, based on what I can understand, the encoding depends on the version of the language of the dialog box in JAWS, I suppose.
Oh, I think we have a misunderstanding here, because there are two, when we talk of encodings, there are two things. One is that dialogue in JAWS or in VDA that we covered, but then there's also using display as a standalone device. And for that, you also sometimes have to set encoding, or you set it and forget it, or sometimes you have to change it. So maybe we made a mistake by just not differentiating between them. There is the encoding of the text that your screen reader sends to the display, and then the display just shows whatever it's sent. And there's also the encoding for your standalone use on the Braille display. So we are running out of time. Any final comments? Anybody? Any closing comments for today? Any of our panelists would like to make before we close?
Just wanted to pick up that one final question in the chat because I thought it was an interesting one about whether RTFC is a program or a translation engine. And I think the answer is that it's both, if I understood that properly. So there's an RTFC program that you can load Word documents into, a bit like you would with Duxbury, and you press translate and emboss, and it embosses them. But there's also an RTFC component that can be built into screen readers and other Braille technology where other translators fall short.
Yes, and actually more than that. RTFC is a series of programs or a set of programs for producing several types of files. Like you can make audio files or DAISY files, and you can do file conversions and prepare Braille files. So yes, it is like everything. It's a component, it's a piece of software, and I'd say it's a whole lifestyle for some because the options in RTFC are almost limitless. So yeah.
And it's only in German, if I got it right, correct?
Yeah, the interface, actually you can switch the interface like to English, but it's mainly used in German-speaking countries, although it will do other languages. It will do English, it will do Italian, right? There was a wonderful comment. Thank you, Vivian, for that comment. This answers, by the way, my question from part 1. Apparently in RTFC, there is an option to mark headings in the Braille documents. The option does not just format the headings, but uses characters to show the headings and heading levels. I'd like to get in touch with you, Vivian, on that, and I should be able to find this in an interface, but anyway, that's cool. So, Rainer, as the leader of the European Braille group, anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, what can I say? Just some minutes ago, I had the thought in me, it's really a great thing to meet with people from all the world, nearly, talking about Braille and the use of Braille and the use of Braille displays in this case. It's really amazing that we are doing this, that we are coming together, that we are giving us each other knowledge and patience on this topic, on this practice of Braille. It's a very nice thing, and I'm very emotional about this, to be connected with you, with everything, with so many experts, not only those who talked, but who wrote in the chat. And so, yeah, I want to thank you for this. It's really a good thing to meet, to talk, to force Braille, and that's great.
And we in the working group on Braille, the European Blind Union, we're looking for ways to promote Braille. And we can do it together much better. So if you think of some ways we could develop or something we could do together, just go ahead and send us an email to team@livingbraille.eu. Let me repeat the address again, team@livingbraille.eu. And we'll keep in touch. Next month, we will be talking about controlling the devices from our Braille displays. And we'll reach out to Braille display manufacturers because some displays have very peculiar ways of controlling devices. So we'll try to get a good overview. And that's going to be the last Wednesday of March. And in April, it's authoring content or creating content with your Braille display. And having said this, I'd like to thank our wonderful panelists and everybody who wrote in for your participation. Thank you for being with us, and let's keep brailing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.